Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Emberger. Who else would it be? Start off with an apology. I haven't uploaded a podcast since Monday morning. Where's the Sunday night or Monday morning? Something like that. It's been a couple days. It's Wednesday now. Haven't uploaded a podcast, so I need to catch up on a few things. First, I was going to record a podcast last night. Actually, when I was driving home, I was thinking I was going to do an experiment. As you know, I've been meaning to get into live streaming more. So I was going to go home, turn on Flight Simulator 2020, turn on the webcam, turn on the live chat, and spend some time with my listeners and the YouTube subscribers. And it's a really good way to interact with you live and have some fun playing video games. The experiment I was going to do last night, sorry I coughed, you can't catch COVID through your speakers. What I was going to do last night was to live stream and tell everybody on the live stream, all, 7 people who hang out with me whenever I live stream, that I was going to record a podcast at the same time. So not only would they watch me playing Flight Simulator, but I would also record a podcast at the same time, and you could watch how the sausage is made, so to speak. Well, that didn't really materialize. So I was supposed to do a podcast last night. I wanted to do a podcast last night. But I got home and I had scheduled a tow truck to take my car, Rowdy, the next morning to finally get her new computer installed and flashed and coded to my VIN number and all that rigmarole. Very expensive computer. It costs as much as a gaming laptop, with 0 bit of the fun, and then you have to pay more money to have it flashed and coded to your specific car, coded to the immobilizer, coded to the AV, coded to everything. So anyways, I went out to the driveway to prep the car for towing, for them to work on it, which basically meant putting the dashboard back together on the driver's side. I had taken out the knee board and everything to change the brake light switch, because before I knew it was the computer that was bad, I thought it might be the brake light switch causing the issue, so I changed the brake light switch, the brake pedal switch, which required removing some panels and things under the dash. They're just lying all over the floorboards by the pedals, and you can't operate the vehicle like that. So I buttoned it all up last night. Took maybe 20, 30 minutes, very awkward positions getting under there, and putting the knee airbag back in very delicately so it didn't explode and injure me or kill me. So I put the airbag back under there, under the steering wheel. Why do you need a knee airbag? Whatever. Put the knee airbag back under there, put the dash back together, and cleared the area. So now it's drivable. It's like it was for the driver. There's still a bunch of junk in the passenger seat, but that's not the point. I wanted to make it able to be test driven. So prepared that. 20, 30 minutes took me. I was finally happy to have that done. Looking forward to, the next morning to have the car finally towed away to get the computer. So as I buttoned the car up and closed the door and locked it, walked back into my garage, pressed the garage door opener again, like I've done hundreds of times, and the darn thing nearly exploded off of its tracks. Like, wheels went flying everywhere. The actual track of the garage door bent and bowed like it was made out of tin foil. The DeLorean's in here also, and I'm worried about the garage door, just falling on the DeLorean. My wife came out to see what the commotion is, and I kept trying to get her to stay back in case things fell. I was trying to see what I could do to mend the situation at least, or whatever. We worked on it for a little bit, and we wound up having a garage repair technician come out. It was something that I couldn't deal with, especially not at that point. There was too much broken on it for me to deal with. So we had the garage door technician come out this morning, a moment after the tow truck guy got there. Busy morning at the Hamburger household. The garage door, as I understand it, is it's fixed now. It's serviceable now. The technician couldn't adjust a couple things because the DeLorean was still in the garage, so he couldn't get up to the garage door motor and adjust what needed to be adjusted, but he told us how to do it, told me how to do it, so I can back the car out and get up there and do an adjustment. Basically, it's the adjustment for how far up it pulls the garage door, and it's supposed to be just even with the wood trim of the door opening itself, and mine was coming up a little too high. He says that puts too much strain on the entire system, blah, blah, blah. Point is, a very active evening last evening with repairing the car, putting the car back together, and then having the garage door come off its tracks. When it rains, it pours. That is the most true cliche statement in the world. If one thing goes wrong, then it all just piles on. So of course I'm getting the car ready to go in for an expensive computer flashing, and I come to the garage door closer, and the garage door falls off its tracks. My good God Almighty, everything is just coming apart here at the seams. So fast forward, the car is at the shop getting its ECM flashed. Hopefully, fingers crossed, there's not any more issues that come up. I'm managing my expectations. I am waiting for the expensive bill to come across, to come from that. But the garage door is fixed, and Rowdy is getting attention. I haven't driven Rowdy probably since the spring, so it's going to be like having a new car. For the past several months, I have been driving my wife's Jetta, borrowing my wife's Jetta, and driving the DeLorean. Just kind of trading back and forth, driving the Jetta when I can, driving the DeLorean when I can't. The DeLorean, once again, as it has done over the past 20 years, has saved my bacon being a backup car. Last night I was busy. All I'm saying, didn't get to record the podcast or live stream because of issues at the hamburger house, but things are getting sorted now, and I have more time to record the podcast. That's my sob story, and it's not really much of a sob story. It's just everyone listening right now has stories like that. Maybe you're going through something like that. Geek Therapy Radio is hopefully a little bit of a vacation for you, at least mentally. At least you can hear some encouraging things at the end of the podcast, even if your car's in the shop or your garage door's falling off its tracks, or maybe you can't even afford a place with a garage door and your funds are limited and you're really struggling. Hopefully Geek Therapy Radio, hopefully the message at the end that you are loved and worthy of love and worthy of giving love and receiving love and worthy of your own self-respect helps ease it, because that's what we're here for. At the end of the day, we're all here to support each other. If we can't support each other physically, if we can't support each other financially, we can still hopefully support each other mentally and emotionally. So thank you all for listening. This is not the end. I'm not signing off. But thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Regardless, hopefully you find some joy and some solace here. And I love that you're so understanding when I do go off on my geeky rants and opinions. I appreciate that you get a kick out of it. Let me tell you something. Actually, here's the thing. I'm going to thank all my patrons here in a minute, because I owe you that. I wanted to mention the other day, I didn't upload I recorded a podcast, but I didn't upload the podcast. I recorded a podcast about 45 minutes worth on 9/11, September 11th, this past week. I think Friday was September 11th, and I recorded a podcast about September 11th. I'm not going to go into detail here, but at the end of it, it was basically me taking a stance that I will never profit off of 9/11. So I would never dedicate an entire show to 9/11 and play all the horrible audio from 9/11 and then in order to get you to the commercial break for sponsors. Basically, it meant mainly for my the radio broadcast that on 9/11, and here I am going into detail as usual on Geek Therapy Radio, that on 9/11, most radio hosts you'll hear across the country will do an entire show dedicated to 9/11 and the people, all the horrible phone calls of people in the airplanes and all the death and tragedy and everything like that. And then the next thing you hear is our commercials. Here's 5 minutes of commercials, for-profit commercials. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. So basically, I made a podcast to basically confirm to you and just be accountable to you, the listener, that I will never make a show like that for profit. And it kind of dawned on me. So I didn't upload that podcast. I went on to my Facebook, Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook, and made the little mention of I'm never going to profit off of 9/11. I said something like, I'm never going to use 9/11 to pay rent. death and tragedy and human suffering to pay rent. Kind of like I deleted the podcast about Beirut and political discourse in the United States and all that. You know what? I just reaffirmed that Geek Therapy Radio is not about that. And I think it's important for people to, if they hold themselves to a standard. So from the get-go of Geek Therapy Radio, as you know, it's always been an oasis. I call it an oasis in the desert of politics, meaning that you hear so much political opinion over here, political opinion over here. You hear so much division just in general, not even just politics, but just division in general. And I never wanted Geek Therapy Radio to be that. I'd never wanted to do a podcast or a broadcast that leaves you, the listener, with a predetermined feeling towards another person or group of people. And I try to do that. Sometimes I get a little spicy, sometimes I get a little salty, but at the end of the day, overall, I don't want you I don't want to precondition your thoughts or feelings towards other people who you've never met. And that is all you hear on traditional broadcast radio. That is all you hear is your own echo chamber blasting somebody else so you hate people that you've never met. And I never wanted Geek Therapy Radio to be that. I never wanted to bring anybody down or focus on sadness in order to get clicks in visits and shares or anything like that, which is why I took down the Beirut explosion podcast, which is why I never uploaded the 9/11 podcast. It just doesn't fit. I will speak to subjects. Obviously, I will speak briefly to subjects. Hey, for instance, in Beirut, this was terrible happened today, thoughts and prayers, and we're thinking about anybody affected. I will mention that, but I'm not going to do a whole show ever again about a certain aspect of human suffering. I'll draw attention to it, say that you're not alone, I'm with you, we love you, but my litmus test, and it's why I didn't upload the 9/11 thing, is how emotional am I about this subject? You've heard me say on Geek Therapy Radio before, and I promise that we're going to get to more topics here. You've heard me say on Geek Therapy Radio before that one of the best tests you can do for yourself as to whether or not you have a firm grasp or idea of a situation or scenario is ask yourself or identifying yourself how emotional you are about it. And if you're really hyped up and emotional about it, that is when you are most susceptible to not thinking clearly about something. So if you're not thinking clearly about something due to heightened emotion, then it's probably best to check yourself. And I'm talking to you, the listener, but also I'm talking to myself. And it's a practice that I'm trying to implement in myself. If something gets me all riled up emotionally, that means that I am easily manipulated in my thoughts and feelings regarding that. It means I can miss the truth. So, anytime I think it's a good idea, if I ever in the future record 45 minutes about whatever, hot topic news of the day, that's really when I'm going to check myself. I'm emotional about it. This is connected to me emotionally. I'm getting an emotional rise out of this. That means I may not have the whole clear picture here. That means I may say things as truth that aren't actually truth, even if I believe them to be in my heightened emotional state to be truth. So I'm just trying to check myself. I know that there's some out there that would say, I call them, frogs that have boiled in the water, that might think a show like Geek Therapy Radio is incredibly unimportant, that there are so many more important things going on in the world to devote 30 minutes, an hour, 3 or 5 times a week talking about the new PlayStation 5 prices and releases, which I'm going to talk about in Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S, and talk about new Mandalorian trailer and all sorts of other geeky things that have happened in the week, which we're going to get to now in this show. They'll say that devoting any time to that type of geekery is nonsense. People even saying that they don't have any time in their lives to devote to any sort of hobby or any sort of passion. And I get it. We get clouded. The weight of the world gets clouded. We have families. I'm about to have a kid myself. And I get it, things get in the way. No, you can't go into your art studio for 7 hours a day like you used to when you were a 16-year-old. Of course not. I can't go into my garage for 6 or 7 hours with a Fender Stratocaster and a Stevie Ray Vaughan record and just shred. I can't do that anymore. But I can spend a little bit of time when I get it here and there devoted to a geeky endeavor. And I take joy, and I think it's important, and this is what I try to convey to the listeners. This is what Geek Therapy Radio is all about. That no matter what you've got going on in your life and how busy you definitely are, and it's very valid to be busy, that we not lose sight of what actually brings us joy and geek therapy. And you can find that in many places. For instance, I'm in a group in Marco Polo, me and a few close friends, and they were halfway joking, John, when your son comes along, you're not going to have time to play all the video games. And I'm just thinking, yeah, you know. And then I was thinking, video games isn't really my geek thing. Like it's not the only thing. And I told them, I know they were halfway joking, but I was like, I actually don't play a whole ton of video games. Not all the time. Yes, if I'm lucky, I'll spend a couple hours playing Flight Simulator whenever, but I don't sit there for hours a day. Sometimes I go entire stretches of days or weeks without ever touching a video game. I don't play video games all the time. I enjoy them when I can, but I don't play them all the time. But the point is, what I was telling them, and what I'm telling you now, the listener, who are all geeks, I assume, by listening to Geek Therapy Radio, because geeks are sexy. I haven't said that recently enough. Geeks are sexy because it means you're passionate about something. People like people who are passionate about things. That when my son comes, yes, obviously that means I can't sit there and play Rocket League or even Flight Simulator for hours at a time. I'm going to be on poop patrol like every hour and a half. My whole life is going to be devoted to my son, as it should be. That's going to be my geek thing, not raising an idiot, basically. Like keeping my son alive and making sure that he's a compassionate, intelligent person. I don't want to raise an idiot. My son, diaper changing is going to become this it's a process and it's a protocol, and sometimes processes and protocols are therapeutic. And when I'm sitting there holding my son, feeding him his bottle or just cuddling with him or whatever, and he's asleep in my arm, that doesn't mean I can't have the Kindle there nearby and be reading Dragon's Teeth by Michael Crichton. It doesn't mean that I can't be engaging in something else geeky, or at least what I do a lot of the times when I can't physically do something geeky, like I can't pick up a screwdriver, I can't go work on restoring my old Panasonic 3DO, I can't fire up the NES or whatever. I've developed this ability. And I think there's a lot of people listening right now who can sympathize with this. I've developed this ability to let my mind wander to geek things. That I take almost just as much joy in sitting still and letting my mind wander to a subject and just stick on it for a while when my hands are occupied, I can't really do much. Like falling asleep. You're trying to fall asleep. Can't sleep. I always use that as an opportunity to focus on things and like fix things in my mind. And I can't tell you the number of things that I've found the answer to the problem just by being still and thinking about it. A problem with the car, a problem with the DeLorean, a problem with the garage door, a problem with whatever, some little problem with the Raspberry Pi. I can't figure out a multi-boot an operating system or something like that. And it doesn't involve going on to Google and typing it when I can't sleep. A lot of the times, the situations, these problems can solve themselves in your mind just by being still and thinking about it. And I've developed this skill. Here's where some people will sympathize. I grew up Catholic. In Catholic Mass, especially when you're a child, is the most boring place on the planet Earth. So I would build airplanes in my mind. When I wasn't imagining ninjas flying in through the glass and, I had just watched 3 Ninjas and a bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Sidekicks and all that kind of stuff and Karate Kid. Imagine myself fighting back a ninja invasion in church. I was thinking of mechanical things. Some say I mean, if you should have been, praying and stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, I did, but like God gave me a brain, and I'm going to tinker with things in my brain while the priest says the same thing over and over again. Oh, I know. This is, Easter, got it. Oh, I sound like such a terrible Catholic. Is there a good Catholic? No, there's not. Anyways, I would tinker with things. I would build airplanes. I would think about reduction gears and things like that. How can I pedal my bike pedals fast enough through a set of reduction gears to have a propeller big enough and provide enough thrust on the back of the bike that I could attach a paraglider to the top, and maybe under pedal power, how could I, who weigh 75, 80, 90 pounds, generate enough thrust to get enough lift and fly myself in the air? Like if I built this at the end of the cul-de-sac of my street, can I just aim it down the street? Oh, there's a little bit of a slope that goes down towards the lake. If I aim down there, maybe I can get a little extra push, and there's wind coming off the lake. Maybe that, the headwind will help give me more lift. Blah, blah, blah. And I think about these things. And one time, sorry for the story time, but it's nice sometimes. I told my mom, after several Sundays of thinking about this flying bike, I told my mom after church one day, Mom, I had this idea for a flying bike. I mean, church is boring, so I think about this. And my mom was like, oh yeah. My mom is super devout. She, like a nun. She is a saint here on earth. There's no more godly person in this world, I think, than my mother. And I thought she was going to say, son, you were supposed to be thinking about Jesus while we're in mass. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But she didn't say that. My mom's reply to me, telling her about this flying bike concept that I thought of in church, her reply was, well, why don't you try to build it? But unironically and not sarcastically, it was, well, what do you need to try to make this happen? Like what, we can go to Ace Hardware right now, go to hardware store and Walmart and stuff. What do you think you need to make this happen? Why don't you can try building it? She encouraged it. And I never got very far with it. I think I got my bike frame in the middle of the garage, and I started getting PVC pipes and like trash bags to make wings and things. And I didn't get very far. And I asked Mom years later why, it seems like a normal mother would say, no, you're not going to build a flying bike. But my mom knew that. She said she knew it was very unlikely that I was going to build an airworthy flying bike. She had a basic concept of physics. She knows that little 10-year-old's legs aren't going to be able to pump fast enough through reduction gears to generate any appreciable lift. She knew all that because she's an adult and she went to college and has her master's degree and understands the way things work. She was a carpenter. She used to build us skateboard ramps and things to jump our bikes off of. She knew a basic bit about how the process, what it would take to do this. So instead of telling me no, she just said, try. Because she knew I wouldn't actually be able to do it, but I would learn infinitely along the way about mechanics, about physics, and about myself. So all that to say is, it's the quiet moments when I can't really do much with my hands. I can't really work with anything. I can't tinker with anything, that I find joy tinkering in my mind. It is very often that if you ever find me spaced out or not paying attention and I'm not doing anything, that I'm problem solving something in my head. I'm thinking of things in my head. Can I share one thing with you before I get on to the Patreon thing? Because this is what geeks' mind do. They wander, they remember things. This is going to be very far-fetched, but even if you're atheist, I think you'll find it at least a fascinating kind of concept. And it has to do with just the mind wandering and coming up with this kind of theory. It's not a scientific theory, really. It's just kind of a fanciful idea. But I'm going to share it with you now. And it's something that I thought of when I was, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16 years old. I was laying there at night, got to thinking, couldn't sleep. A lot of us geeks had insomnia, can't sleep. I'm staring at the ceiling, making shapes in the popcorn ceiling, the drywall on the roof, the ceiling of the room, whatever. And I'm thinking about the universe. Oftentimes my mind will wander to universe things out in my brain. I'll be trying to come up with a unified theory. I'll be, standing on the shoulders of giants. Well, if Hawking couldn't figure it out, or if Einstein couldn't figure it out, if Neil deGrasse Tyson couldn't figure it out, if Richard Dawkins couldn't figure it out, maybe I can. Maybe me, Lane here, 15, 16 years old, could come up with an elegant, unified theory of everything. So, anyways, it was kind of in that mindset that I came up with this idea. I don't know, maybe at the time I was going to a Christian school. I've told you that story, and it was terrible. I hated going to school. My prayer every day was, God, please don't make me hate you after this. Because a lot of people did after that, being Bible thumped every single day, having it crammed down your throat. It was horrible. So anyways, I was thinking of this theory, and here it is. Maybe we read there was a part of the Bible where basically God said, you can't see my face. If you see no human being can see my face unaltered. And whatever. It's part of the Bible. It's a Bible story. Anybody who's grown up in a house that studied the Bible, you know what I'm talking about. So why? And if you've seen Ark of the Covenant, Indiana Jones, when their faces all melt when they open the Ark of the Covenant, it was that sort of thing. And it talks about that in the Bible. So I was thinking about the knowledge of good and evil and wisdom and everything. And at first, I in a roundabout way, I got to this kind of theological conclusion that the knowledge of good and evil could be summed up almost perfectly in the splitting of hydrogen atoms in the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb was the closest we got to seeing God's face. This is where my brain went when I was 15, 16 years old for this little theory contraption I had. Because once humans started tearing apart the actual building blocks, and again, this is if you believed in God and whatever, but I still think atheists would find this fascinating, that if God is using molecules and atoms as the building blocks of the universe, we know that that's the building blocks of the universe, whether or not you believe in God. Atoms, molecules, string theory, energy, all of that is the building blocks of the universe. Dark matter, antimatter, all this stuff. So once humans decided, we'll just start splitting it. We'll cut it in half. We'll release the energy, release these bonds, and release this energy. There's an incredible amount of energy. Turns out E equals mc squared means that matter has an incredible amount of energy. So once humans had the knowledge of good and evil, and we started to split the atoms, we split atoms, and we saw God's face. And everybody who splits the atom, who's nearby, and you split enough of them, you don't even melt, you just vaporize. And in my head, when I was 14 or 15 years old, I'm thinking that, well, that's seeing God's face. Maybe that's what he's talking about. And that's the knowledge of good and evil. And where I got to this idea of maybe it all ties into the knowledge of good and evil is that you can also use radiation for good. Humans have this brain and this knowledge that you can use radiation not to destroy entire cities. It's a different application, I know, but get what I'm saying here. You can use it to help cure disease and help cure cancer. And you can use it in x-rays to help people. You can see broken bones and all the scientists who have given their lives over the years to develop this technology for the greater good of humanity. You take one similar aspect of physics and you can use it either to A, blow up entire cities, or 2, take the similar principles and heal the human body, or at least fight cancer and fight ailment. and that was the knowledge of good and evil. And when humans split the atom, you're basically destroying God's building blocks, and that's how you see the face, and that's the atomic bomb. And that was the warning. You're very smart humans. If you were thinking like God, I gave you this big old brain, and you're either going to use it to think the earth is flat and deny science, or you can use this big, beautiful scientific brain to actually help people. Provide energy and help fight cancer and all this stuff. So now you have the knowledge. It's all in how you use it. The free will to use it for good or to blow up your neighbor. I don't know. That fanciful idea came to me in one of my mental tinker moments. All going back around. Thank you very much for bearing with me. If you find it fascinating, great. All going back around to my friend saying in the Marco Polo, you're not going to have any time for geek things and playing video games when the kid comes by. Well, I do though. Because even when I'm feeding my son and doing all that, I will be able to think about things and tinker with things in my brain and think about his upbringing, and I will be able to find joy. I think that's a real trait that geeks have. We can find joy and keep our brain occupied even when we're quiet and alone and preoccupied in jobs that we don't like, doing things, sitting at the mechanic waiting for an oil change, just sitting there. And yes, you can use your phone and play Candy Crush or Google search or whatever you're going to do, but you can also just sit there and like exercise your mind. Does that make sense? Just because I can't hold a soldering iron doesn't mean that I'm not mentally stimulated. Do you get that? Just because I'm not holding a wrench, not holding a soldering iron, I'm not editing a video, I'm not playing Ninja Turtles for the millionth time on my NES. Just because I'm not doing that doesn't mean I can't keep my brain stimulated, and I think that's a very valuable gift for geeks. The ability to keep our brain stimulated even if we have nothing in front of us to stimulate it. Just using the power of your brain to figure things out. And sometimes it results in you shoot out of bed at 3 a.m. Oh my gosh, I know how to fix this. And you didn't do anything but think about it. All it took you was 2 or 3 hours of sitting there focusing on it, thinking about it, seeing this device in your head three-dimensionally for 3 hours. And it clicks. This diode needs to be reversed. That's why it's not getting power to this portion of the circuit. The diode... Or maybe the resistor needs to be adjusted. It's a Zener diode and it needs a certain voltage to whatever. Your brain, all it takes is being quiet and just focusing on it. And I'm not saying that a lot of us don't do that nowadays. I think a lot of us get distracted and forget how to do that, or that we can do that nowadays. We're so focused on getting the next thing done, doing this for work, doing this for family, doing all this, that we forget that life isn't all about procedure, and that in those procedural moments, when it becomes muscle memory, that's when you can unlock your brain to geek out about things that you do want to geek out about. You know, do your work, don't mess up your job, don't get fired. But I hope you realize what I'm saying. Just because you're preoccupied doesn't mean your mind has to be aloof. Okay, let's move on here to Patreon patrons, and then we'll get on to all the topics of the day. Apple had their announcements. Sony did all their stuff. Like I mentioned, there's things to get to, and I'm not sure how much time I'm going to spend on each of them, but I will mention them, bring everybody up to speed. Oh my gosh, NVIDIA benchmarks. I won't do all the benchmarks, but I will let you know briefly, in a glancing blow, what you need to know from it. RTX 3080 specifically. But first, patrons, let me thank all of you. And I so much appreciate this. Brian, thank you. Instant Gratification Monkey, thank you. Up North Geek, thank you. Nate J. Fries, thank you. Jonathan, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much. Asaf, thank you so much. And Jamie, thank you all so much for supporting me on Patreon. That means the world to me. I know it's just $1 or $2 to you. I actually take that back. Make me sound like an ass. It's not just $1 or $2 to you. Even if you're wealthy, it's not just $1 or $2 to you. It's $1 or $2, no matter your financial status, that you are giving to somebody else to support them. And that is miraculous. It's never lost on me. Even if it's $1 patron, it doesn't matter. Holy crap, you don't have to give me $1. You don't have to give me $1. And that's the whole thing. You don't have to give me jack squat. So I so much appreciate that you do. Even if it was a penny. It's just like, great. Why? Wow. How cool is that? So thank you all to my patrons for your patronage. And if you're not a patron, if you don't have me on Patreon, thank you for listening. Holy crap. Thank you for listening. And I will also implore you, my only plea is to share it with your friends. If you think Geek Therapy Radio is worth anything and you hear a friend saying, I need a new podcast to listen to, say, hey, there's this geek called Johnny Hamburger who goes off on rants about God's face and hydrogen atoms. You might be fun to listen to. You might enjoy it. So thank you all. Share it with your friends and family if you think they'll enjoy it. Don't go to somebody you think won't enjoy it and send it to them. We're all geeks about something. That's the whole point, though. We're all geeks about something. If you have somebody you know that's really into cars, I talk about cars all the time at Geek Therapy Radio. If you have somebody you know that's really into retro computers, I talk about retro computers fairly often on here. Aviation, I talk about planes and video games, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Rocket League, all sorts of things to geek out about. So let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the podcast. Where the heck am I? About 36 and a half minutes in? Take a mental note of that. I'm still probably going to forget something. But let's start with the PlayStation 5. It has been announced officially. Price point is $499 with a disc drive, $399 without a disc drive, available on November 12th. Now, the thing about that is November 12th for most of us, North America, Canada, all that stuff. And then the rest of the world, where did I just see this? Oh gosh, excuse me, I'm burping like a loony. What did I just see this? Now I feel like an idiot. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. November 12th, USA, Japan, Canada, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, and South Korea. November 19th, rest of the world. So there have been a few games announced, the ones that I find most fascinating just personally to me, and I know that you find a lot of things fascinating to you, of course. Final Fantasy 16 looks interesting. I'm not going to say if it's good or not, because it's easier than you think to screw up Final Fantasy, so we'll see, but it's kind of cool to see, new Final Fantasy 16. There's potential there for it to be good. Remake of like a special edition of Devil May Cry 5, Dark Souls, but I am perhaps most excited about God of War Ragnarok. What does it say? Ragnarok is coming to 2021. Kratos warns. So Sony didn't do any sort of trailer or video tease of this, but it was basically Kratos' voice saying that Ragnarok is coming in 2021. So all we know right now is God of War Ragnarok. Is that going to be its final name? I don't know. They might change it, but God of War on PlayStation 5. That is so compelling to me to get one. Oh my goodness. Yes, Final Fantasy 16, but we'll see if that comes out on Steam. I don't know. As of looking right now, I don't know. I love Devil May Cry. I'm not excited enough about Devil May Cry 5. We'll see. Fortnite, of course. But I'm very excited about God of War. That's the reason why I wanted the PlayStation 3, was just because I wanted God of War 3. Exclusives, man. Exclusives. That's a huge deal in console gaming and why people buy consoles. So I wanted to speak to the price a little bit here. So PlayStation 5 is $500, which remember we speculated, and that's right exactly. Go back and listen to Geek Therapy Radios. $500 is exactly where I thought it would be. Thereabouts. I said between $450 and $550, and it would probably be right there in between $500. We also knew that experts speculated that it would cost Sony $480 to build the system. So the $500 PlayStation 5 means that at best, I mean, who knows? They might be even at a loss there. It might have cost them more than $500 per unit with the coronavirus and everything interrupting supply chains. I would bet my bottom dollar that PlayStation is losing money per PlayStation 5. So the full PlayStation 5 with so the only difference between the two models of PlayStation 5 is that one doesn't have a disc drive. It's called the all-digital version. It's the same horsepower, same specs. It just doesn't have an optical disc drive. So $499. It's also €499. It's 449 pounds and 49,980 yen. Did I get that right? So the $399 model, the all-digital version, is €399, 359.99 pounds, and 39,980 yen, as opposed to 49,980 yen. So that's the price point. And the only thing I want to mention about this, other than that the specs are the same for both of them, it's just one is $100 cheaper and doesn't come with the optical drive. You might wonder to yourself, well, shoot, I'm just going to get the $399 version. It's $100 cheaper. Who uses optical discs anymore? My only retort to that, film geeks, home theater geeks, puke at the thought. Oh, I get the vapors when I think about watching 4K streaming content, 4K on Netflix. Blech! The artifacts, oh, heavenly days, horse feathers. I cannot watch the streaming 4K. It is garbage. Those types of geeks prefer to have the actual Blu-ray discs, the uncompressed, purest form of a movie or a TV show or any sort of content you can watch on the physical disc. And they also, not just for the visuals, they like that there's not as many artifacts and it's a much pure presentation and HDR and all that good stuff and 4K and blah, blah, blah. Which is obviously advantages of having a physical disc and watching a Blu-ray movie that takes up 100 gigs just devoted to video and audio. But people like collecting things, and they like to have the physical jewel cases on their shelf. They want to buy the next Jurassic Park movie in 4K or 8K or 3D or whatever and have the actual box on the shelf or in the display case. Also, gamers, there are still people out there who prefer to have the physical copy in their possession. You can let your friend borrow the game. You can trade it. You can do things. No, I mean, GameStop is going the way of the dodo, but it still serves a purpose, and there will still be shops that sell physical copies of game. Just because a huge chain goes down doesn't mean that it's going to be completely unavailable to buy and sell physical and trade physical copies. It's just that GameStop's not going to be the biggest corporation in town doing it. There'll still be brick and mortar that does that. And people want physical disc, whether it's physical games or physical movies. So there are going to be people out there who spring the extra $100 for the optical disc version of PlayStation 5. You can still download content all you want. What is it? Sony PlayStation Plus, and you can be a member and all that stuff and download all you want. You don't have to buy the physical copy, but at least we want the option to. I think a lot of people, I'm not sure if I would say most, but I think a lot of people are still going to buy the optical disc anyways. They're going to spring for it because they never know what's coming down the pipe. And you got to remember also that a lot of people use these devices, the PlayStations especially, and probably Xbox to a certain extent, but I know PlayStation for sure, they use it to watch movies. It's not just their video game system, it's their home entertainment console. They watch movies on it, watch Netflix on it, and play video. They do everything on it. So a lot of people are going to want that disc drive. They're not going to go there. A lot of people aren't going to want to go to 100% streaming in their living room. Maybe a lot of people do, but I think also a lot of people don't. So that's why we're still offering optical discs. here in 2020. So that's PlayStation 5 news. I spent a lot of time on that I didn't think I would. Apple. So Apple had their thing on the 15th yesterday. Apple Watch Series 6 adds blood oxygen monitoring and more. Frankly, I mean, there's some cool stuff. There's some cool stuff that came out, but I was never very enthused about it. And the only thing I wanted to see from the Apple event was that they would announce potentially a MacBook that ran on their own in-house ARM processors, but that didn't happen. Apple One is a subscription bundle, so that you pay one fee for, it's really weird, $14.90. For $15 a month, you get Apple Music, Apple TV, the arcade, and the cloud. For $20 a month, it's for family, and you get, of course, Apple Music, TV, arcade, cloud. And $30 a month, Premiere. What is this? I'm not familiar enough with Apple. Fitness tracking, and what is this icon down here? I'm sorry. There's two more things that are added to the music, TV, arcade, and cloud. You get two more things. I think that's fitness tracking. Whatever. I mean, that's neat. If you're heavily invested in the Apple ecosystem, obviously that's great news, I guess. I would say that probably the biggest thing to come out, other than the announcement of iOS 14, iPadOS 14, tvOS 14, and watchOS 7, is that the iPad Air got such a major freaking update that a lot of people are saying, why the heck would you even buy an iPad Pro? I remember seeing Marquez Brownlee on his Twitter, even iPad Air gets USB Type-C. And I'm thinking, well, that's cool, but part of it's sad that there's that much excitement about USB-C on a $700 device. Or how much does it cost? On an Apple device, period. Apple still likes to use proprietary Lightning ports, and they're rolling out USB Type-C to different products. iPad Air gets USB Type-C. Wow. It's sad that it has to be so cool. The iPad Air will be available in October, and it starts at $699 and has the new A4 Bionic CPU. It's the 5-nanometer process, 6-core CPU with 2 high-performance cores and 4 lower-power, more efficient cores for, background tasks and such. A4 Bionic, I'm reading this in Ars Technica, offers a 30% GPU performance boost. That's pretty significant. 30%, they claim. 16-core neural engine for machine learning. Neat. DJ application that allows for air scratching. iPad Air has a cool camera, though, also. Oh, I mean, the more I read about this, the cooler it is. I'm not in the market for a $600 tablet. 12-megapixel camera, f1.8 aperture. That's a lot of light. 4K 60 frames per second. Wow. 240 frames per second slow motion. I'm guessing that's 1080 or 720. And improved video stabilization. Oh, no. The FaceTime camera, 7-megapixel FaceTime HD. f2.2. That's still a good amount of light. Smart HDR, video capture at 1080, 60 frames a second. Better low light performance. What I would hope f2.2 is a good low light performance. So neat. Magic Keyboard for it will cost $280. Smart Keyboard Folio, which is what I would get, is $179. Jiminy Christmas. So I guess that's all I want to say about the Apple event. Venus, I'll move on. NVIDIA RTX. We've finally been getting benchmarks from around the webs. And basically, when I was looking at Jay's 2 cents, I didn't look at every video in the world about the RTX 3080. But the general consensus is what I want to give to you, is that when I was watching these benchmarks, I was thinking, holy crap, 60 frames per second at 4K, or 4K at 60 frames per second at pretty healthy settings is here. That, to me, the big takeaway from RTX 3080 is now that I can't say, well, we're really not there yet with 4K 60 frames per second true native gaming without upscaling and all that kind of stuff. RTX 3080, $699, 4K 60 and AAA titles at fairly high settings. Absolutely. Some games are doing 4K at 120 frames per second. That's nuts. That's awesome. I will definitely be getting a 3000 series card when I can afford it. I mean, that means that even if 4000 series cards come down the line by the time I can afford a 3000 series card, that there's enough of a gap between 2000 series and 3000 series, and there might not be so much of a gap between 3000 series and 4000 series, that the biggest bang for the buck, money well spent, would be the 3000 series cards. So I think 3000 series is where I jump on board, and I am going to see if I can, as long as I'm going 3000 series, and as you know, I hold on to cards for at least 5 years, I'm going 3090, baby. Why did I put a 3900X 12-core 24-thread Ryzen 9 processor in my CPU if I'm going to skimp out on a graphics card? We'll see if I can make that happen. That's neither here nor there right now. Baby first. So anyways, to recap on the 3080 benchmarks, all you really, really need to know, and I go out there and do your own YouTube watching and go to Notebook Check and, not Notebook Check, oh gosh, I'm blanking out. Gamers Nexus does a freaking awesome job of benchmarking things. Go watch your own benchmarks, go read your own benchmarks, but the big takeaway, I think you'll agree with me, is that 4K 60 frames per second AAA gaming is, I would say, officially here. I'd say 2020. One of the thinnest silver linings is that technology has been pretty cool as far as CPUs and gaming and things like that, and graphics cards. And I think 2020 is first year that 60 frames a second, true 4K AAA titles at high settings. We got it with a 3080. Can't speak for the 3070. I can't wait to see 3090 benchmarks. I have the feeling that the 3090 is just going to curb stomp everything. And then we'll wait to see what AMD does. Oh, it's a good time to be PC Master Race. What else is here? Oh, what the heck? Sorry. The Mandalorian trailer. First thing you need to know before we, listen to this trailer together, is that it debuts on Disney Plus, which is the only reason why Sarah and I got Disney Plus, I think. Mandalorian Season 2 debuts October 30th, 2020. Do you remember right before the pandemic, before it really ramped up, that how cute Baby Yoda was, and that we were all just going to quarantine for a week and it would suck, but we'll watch Tiger King, and everyone's just going to go back to the office a couple weeks later and talk about the Tiger King and Baby Yoda. Oh, the simple times before COVID-19. I mean, COVID was here earlier, late 2019, but I'm not gonna get into all that right now. October 30th, Mandalorian Season 2 on Disney Plus. So let's watch the trailer together. Let me get my board in order here. Am I even rolling? Am I recording this? Yes. Let's roll on Mandalorian. Is that Earth? It looks like Earth. It might probably not Earth, but it looks like it.
Show me the one whose safety deemed such destruction. You must reunite it with
Mandalorian's
its
walking
own
with
kind.
Baby Yoda in the little floating pod.
Where?
This you must determine. The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi.
You expect me to search the galaxy and deliver this creature to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.
This is the way. TIE fighters, X-Wings, land
this is
speeders.
no place for a child.
Wherever I go, he goes.
So I've heard.
That's cute. Ooh.
This is the way.
Neat. Neato Mosquito. Neato Mosquito, October 30th, Disney Plus. Mandalorian Season 2. All right, the last thing. Holy crap, this is a packed podcast. There is a chemical found in Venus's atmosphere that shouldn't be there, but is one of the building blocks of life. So scientists have not figured out why it's there, where it comes from. We'll see, but it's to say it's part of a building block of life. Yeah, you can say there's a bunch of carbon on a different planet, but unless you have all the other pieces, it's liquid water. I mean, we're just talking about life as we know it. But it's still fascinating if you're a space geek. They found the spectral signature of phosphine. Phosphine. What is phosphine? It's apparently a chemical that is required for life. Oh, what is phosphine? Oh, okay. Again, Ars Technica. Phosphor, where is it? Just say it. Okay, gosh. I hate just reading entire paragraphs from websites, but let's just do this. Let's read it you should go visit the website. I was going to say so you don't have to, but you should go check it out. Give credit to the writers. What is phosphine? Phosphorus is one row below nitrogen on the periodic table, and just as nitrogen can combine with 3 hydrogen atoms to form the familiar ammonia, phosphorus can bind with 3 hydrogens to form phosphine. Under Earth-like conditions, phosphine is a gas, but not a pleasant one. It is extremely toxic and has a tendency to spontaneously combust in the presence of oxygen. And that later feature is why we don't see much of it today. It's simply unstable in the presence of any oxygen. So that's why we don't see a ton of it in our atmosphere. We do make some of it for our own uses, and some microbes that live in oxygen-free environments also produce it. Although we have neither identified the biochemical process that does so nor the enzymes involved, still, any phosphine that manages to escape into the atmosphere quickly runs into oxygen and gets destroyed. That's not to say it doesn't exist on other planets. Gas giants like Jupiter have it, but they also have an abundance of hydrogen in their atmosphere and no oxygen, allowing chemicals like phosphine, methane, and ammonia to survive in the atmosphere. And the intense heat and pressure closer to a gas giant's core provide conditions in which phosphine can form spontaneously. Here's the last paragraph. So we have a clear divide between gas giants with hydrogen-rich atmosphere where phosphine can form, and rocky planets where the oxidizing environment should ensure it's destroyed. For that reason, people have suggested that phosphine might be a biosignature we can detect in the atmospheres of rocky planets. We know it's produced by life on Earth, and it is unlikely to be present on these planets unless it's constantly replaced, which is how some researchers ended up pointing a telescope at Venus's atmosphere. Interesting. Is there life on Venus? As we know it, probably not. Venus is a very, 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 very hot and caustic planet. We sent a probe there. You can see. It's pretty cool once you think about it. Sending a probe to the surface of Venus where it melted minutes later, but was able to snap pictures and send back to Earth. Just thinking about planets that we've been to that we can see. And do you ever just go to Mars website and Curiosity and all that and just look around at 4K at Mars's surface and think that's another planet, in little videos of dirt devils, little patchwork frame by frame video clips of dust devils going across the plains of Mars. That's so neat. This podcast is about an hour long, so I think I'm going to start wrapping it up. Be on the lookout. If you are not already subscribed on Geek Therapy Radio YouTube, 2 things. 1, I'm going to get into streaming more often. So subscribe there so that you can see when I'm streaming. I don't ask anybody to do notifications, but apparently you guys do, and that's awesome. I got the notification that you were streaming. Wow. I didn't ask anybody to click the bell icon, but you guys are doing it, and that's awesome. Thank you. 2, I just uploaded a fresh new video today pondering the question as to whether or not the DeLorean possibly helped save the video game industry as we know it. That there is so many similarities between the redesign of the North American NES that look like it was pulled directly from the DeLorean. And if that's the case, then the DeLorean, while the car company failed, the car may have actually helped reinvigorate the video game market after the crash of the early 1980s. It's a very interesting video. I had a lot of fun making it, a lot of work making it. Interesting thing to ponder and geek out about. So, live streaming and brand new video up. Make sure you subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube so you don't miss out of any of that. If you want more information, geektherapyradio.com. That's the probably easiest way to contact me, unless you see me in a live stream, and then you can just talk to me in real time. One of these days, I'll actually turn on the microphone and be able to talk replies instead of going over there and typing them so much. But whatever, we're getting all that sorted out at the Geek Therapy Radio Labs in the Geek Cave. We'll figure all that stuff out. I guess that's all I got to say. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember, as always, it's as true today as it was yesterday and will be tomorrow. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love and receiving love. When your friend, family, or even an acquaintance says they love you, yeah, thank you. And you can tell them that you love them too. We don't have to be weird about it. We don't have to have this feeling that we're not worthy of it. No, you can't love me. I'm worthless. Nope. You're worthy of love. And you're also worthy of your self-respect. We're all geeks about something, so embrace your inner geek. Find a hobby, rekindle an old one. You're good at stuff. Sometimes being good at stuff, well, almost every time, being good at stuff means sucking at stuff first. So find a hobby, maybe put what time into it you can, even if that just means devoting 20 minutes when you go to bed to just letting your mind wander and think about geek things. And maybe you tonight will go to bed, or today if you have insomnia or whatever your work schedule is, or how your brain's working right now, maybe you'll figure out the unified theory of everything. And then you can email me. Go to the website geektherapyradio.com and tell me what the unified theory is. You've strung it all together: string theory and gravity and the high force and low force and strong force and weak force and light and everything, matter. You figured it out. It's all connected somehow. We know it is. What is the elegant equation that ties it all together? E equals MC squared is part of it. That's not all of it. There's more. Use your brain. Devote 20 minutes to thinking about the unified theory tonight. Let me know how it goes. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. Long episode today, but you know what? I didn't release one in the past few days. So take care of yourselves. Be healthy, be happy, be safe, and I'll talk to you next time.